Good evening and welcome to tonight's Bible study. We have worked our way up to Proverbs 23. And before we get started, though, I want to say a word about the veterans. Thank you for your service, and we appreciate what you have done. And today, for Veterans Day, we just want to let you know that. Again, Proverbs 23. When you sit to dine with a ruler, note well what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony. Do not crave his delicacies, for that food is deceptive. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone, for they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave his delicacies, for he is the kind of person who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. You will vomit up the little you have eaten and will have wasted your compliments. Do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. Do not move an ancient boundary stone or encroach upon the field of the fatherless, for their defender is strong. He will take up their case against you. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to words of knowledge. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with the rod, they will not die. Punish them with the rod and save them from death. My son, if your heart is wise, then my heart will be glad indeed. My innermost being will rejoice when your lips speak what is right. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord, for there's surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. Listen, my son, and be wise, and set your heart on the right path. Do not join those who drink too much wine, or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy. A man whose father is wise, who fathers a wise son, rejoice in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be full of joy. My son, give me your heart, and let your eyes delight in my ways. For an adulterous woman is a deep pit, and a wayward wife is a narrow well. Like a bandit she lies in wait, and multiplies the unfaithful among men. Who has woe? Who has sorrow? Who has strife? Who has compliments? Who has needless bruises? Who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end, it bites like a snake and poison like a viper. Your eyes will see strange sight. Your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high seas, lying on top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I'm not hurt. They beat me, but I don't feel it. When will I wake up so I can have another drink? As we mentioned last week, we started with the 30 sayings of the wise. We did the first 6 last week. This week we pick up saying 7 through 19. And I'll go through each saying one at a time. I'll hook a couple of them together just because they go together. The first one goes along with the next one about food. So number 7 and 9 kind of goes together along with number 16 and number 19. The two ideas is gluttony and drunkenness. And both of these are sins. Obviously, we will see how being a drunk is harmful to self. And if you ever have a person that is a drunk as a family member, you know they can harm those who are around them. The first one, saying 7, is when you sit to dine with a ruler, note well what is before you, and put a knife to your throat if you are given to gluttony. And the whole idea is if a person is greedy, gluttony is greed, especially gluttony has to do with food. Solomon, or this wise one, is saying it is better to put a knife to your throat than to be gluttony. As a matter of fact, his advice to us is continuing in verse 3. It says, do not crave his delicacy, for that food is deceptive. And what we're talking about is our diet. Diet is one of those things. I feel like Garfield the cat that says diet is die with a T attached to it. At least that's the joke that I often tell. But in reality, diet is what you eat. And some people have good diets and some people have bad diets. A person that have good diet eat good wholesome food that is good for you, fresh fruits and vegetables, non-preserved things like that. People that have bad diet have things that are fatty and etc. And basically, you've heard the saying, we are what we eat. We are what we eat. And a person who overeats, and that's what gluttony is, to eat beyond your need. And I have to admit, I love sweets. I love to eat sugary stuff. And for those of y'all who remember, last year when I first came for the first 3.5 months without Rosalie, I gained 20 pounds. 20 pounds in a little bit before that, because I knew I was moving, and we had just moved in Rochester and we're eating out a whole lot more. And I gained all that weight simply by overeating and lack of exercise. And so a mere change of diet, and I've lost that 20 pounds plus a little bit more. I'm not eating less, I'm just eating better foods. More fruit, vegetables, more lean meat, etc. And so Solomon's word is very true. He said, when you sit down to eat with anybody, note well what is before you. Is it good, wholesome food, or is it fattening food that will clog up your arteries, as we know, and cause you problem? Is it processed food, or is it, good home cooking? And I must say, I have been very fortunate. The most I've ever weighed was 187. This morning I weighed 161. As I mentioned, 187 was last year, the end of December. And basically just changing my diet to more fruit and vegetables and more wholesome food. I still eat some of the other stuff, don't get me wrong. I still love my ice cream. I still love cake and donuts and those things. But here's the thing. Proportion, diet is what you eat. And too much of the junk food do affect you. We see that same saying is picked up again in saying number 9. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave his delicacy. For he is the kind of person who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. You will vomit up the little you have eaten, and you would have wasted your compliments. And here what it's talking about is who you eat with. Begrudging hosts. And I know if this was a long time ago. I, as a little kid, I'm sharing again stories from my past. As a little kid, I had an aunt that was like this. She gave you food, but it was begrudgingly given to you. And because it was begrudgingly given, and let's be realistic, we know when somebody gives us something and say, here is X, Y, and Z, and you can eat it. But they do it with such a spirit and attitude where you know that they really didn't mean to give it to you. And that was the case with this particular aunt of mine. And she would give you something, and she was fairly well off as, financially. And every time we went over there, I remember having to, it was like this. Whenever I ate at home, my mother made a cake, for example, and there were 9 of us. The cake was sliced up, so we got at least a slice. We went over to this aunt, and the saying in my family was you could hold up the cake and look through it because it was so thinly sliced. And it was not just cake, it was everything that she gave us. Delicacies sometimes, things that we couldn't afford, but it was given in such small portion and so begrudgingly that, we didn't even, there came a point in time we didn't even want to go to eat anything that she gave us. And so I understood this verse. The moment I read it, I thought back to this particular aunt of mine. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. Do not crave their delicacy. For this is the kind of person who is always thinking about the costs. And here's the thing about eating. Whenever anybody comes to my house today, my wife and I make sure we always have more than enough food. As a matter of fact, Rosalie kind of goes overboard. And if anybody who have ever eaten at our house knows this, she makes way too much food and a whole lot of varieties. We have friends that come and eat with us in Thanksgiving and Christmas, and they know exactly what we're talking about. The food is put out, we eat it until we, has eaten too much. And that goes back to the first part, don't overdo it. Unfortunately, obviously, all of us, Christmas, Thanksgiving, special holidays, we overdo it. I'm the first to admit I overdid it. Halloween, for example, I gained over 2.5 pounds just in eating extra stuff, mainly candy bars. But here's the thing. I've already lost that weight because following a good diet. And the other part is make sure when you are a host that when you give somebody, here's the rule. Freely give and freely receive. As a host, freely pass out what you have, and as a receiver, freely receive. Let's go back up to saying number 8, which is verse 4 and 5. Do not wear yourself out to get rich. Do not trust your own cleverness. Cast but a glance at riches, and they are gone. For they will surely sprout wings and fly off to the sky like an eagle. And what this is talking about is a person who dedicate themselves to the only thing that is important is money, 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 money. And y'all probably know some people like this. People who they sacrifice anything and everything to get rich. Unfortunately, they sacrifice their health, they sacrifice their family, they sacrifice their friends, they stay at the office and work extra and do everything for the almighty dollar. And what Solomon is saying here, the wisest man, is do not wear yourself out to get rich. If wealth is the most important thing for you, then you are sacrificing too much. Money is important, but it's not the most important thing. And I keep reminding us as Christian, the most important thing for us as Christian is first our relationship with God and then relationship with others. And money is important, but and here's what we're talking about is how do we set our priorities? What is the most important thing to you and to me? And for me, I know I've sat down and I've set priorities, what is important. And obviously for me, family is important, God is important, and health is important. All these things come before wealth. And so if I have to face a situation, which is more important? First, God is first, my family, my health, and then somewhere along the way, somewhere else is my job, wealth, etc. And so that's what this is saying. Do not wear yourself out to get rich, because if you make that your primary goal, You may get the wealth, but at what cost? I've known people who have sacrificed health, family, and other things to get wealth. And that is never what we should do as Christians. Let's move on to saying 10. Very simple verse, one sentence. Do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. I have made it a habit, especially when I was a chaplain. If a person was a fool and just went on and on and on, I would try to avoid them, and I would spend as little amount of time with them. And somebody once asked me, Chaplain, why would you do that? And I said, well, the Bible clearly teaches that we should not spend time with fools, and that we should indeed, because basically you're wasting your words. And the only thing we have is time. Time is the most important thing we have. And if you spend your time with a person who is foolish and who is a fool, they will scorn your words and your word come to nothing. Your life, basically, for the most important thing is your time. And so that verse says, do not speak to fools, for they will scorn your prudent words. And speaking of time, I think Jesus set the example for us. As a matter of fact, out of the thousands of people who were following Jesus, he chose 12 to spend most of his time with. And from those 12, he chose 3, Peter, James, and John. And if Jesus recognized that he didn't spend all his time with the crowd, he spent it with the 12 disciples who became apostles, minus Judas, and specifically with those 3 apostles. Obviously, we need to make sure how we spend our time. Do not spend it on people who waste your time, fools, etc. So much for that one. Saying 11. Do not move ancient boundary stone or encroach on the fields of the fatherless, for their defender is strong. He will take up their case against you. Today we have modern ways of doing things, but boundary stones, your property, your property, and don't want your neighbor's property. Don't encroach on your neighbor's property. Don't move the marker. As a matter of fact, modern surveyors, if you move it, they will know because they have it marked down to a science. But back in this time, people would move the boundary stone to try to gain more land and to take advantage. And if the authorities found out, they would the defender, for their defender is strong, and they will take up the case against you. If they can prove that you moved that boundary stone and you're doing something, that was a no-no, especially during that time and even today. So that's just advice. Some people still try to do it, but do not move those markers to show boundaries. The next few saying is having to do with instruction, and I want to group them together. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to the words of knowledge. That's the first one. Saying 12. Apply your heart to instruction and your ears to the word of knowledge. And that basically is put instruction as a high priority and really listen to words of knowledge. Number 13. Do not withhold discipline from a child. If you punish them with the rod, they will not die. Punish them with the rod and save them from death. And what this is talking about is today, for example, obviously this would not work as well because we have certain rules, and I agree with the rules of today. But the whole idea was spare the rod and spoil the child. And they are, I remember, for example, when I was growing up, and obviously I'm dating myself, and many of y'all who are listening, is getting a whipping from your father or your mother was just something because you misbehave. And I remember getting quite a few whippings in my days. As a matter of fact, I've related stories on this one where I played hooky for in 3rd grade for 3 days a week for about 6-7 weeks before I got caught, and I got a good whipping. And that one, and my mother quoted this when she whipped me. She says, spare the rod and spoil the child. And if you punish them with the rod, they will not die. And as she whipped me, she said, I'm doing this for your own good. And like I said, I played hooky for about 6-7 weeks, 3 days a week. I went to school Monday and Friday to learn the lesson on Monday. They repeated the lesson Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and I took the test on Friday. Long story short, After that whipping, I learned the lesson: go to school, study, and learn. It wasn't until later on in high school that when I was sick and they sent me home, I told them, call my mother because I'm not going to get another whipping for playing hooky ever again. And punish them with the rod and save them from death. I can tell you, my mother gave me a whipping, but the lesson I learned on the importance of school and going to school and attending school was so valuable that I am what I am today because of that. Let's skip and do 16 and 19 because they go together. Listen, my son, and be wise, and listen to the heart, and set your heart on the right path. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat, for drunkards and gluttons become poor, and drowsiness clothes them in rags. And then 19, which picks up at verse 29 and goes through verse 35, the end of this one. Woe, who has woes, who has sorrow, who has strife, who has complaints, who has needless bruises, who has bloodshot eyes? Those who linger over wine, who go to sample bowls of mixed wine. Do not gaze at wine when it is red, when it sparkles in the cup, when it goes down smoothly. In the end it bites like a snake and poisons like a viper. Your eyes will not see straight, and your mind will imagine confusing things. You will be like one sleeping on the high sea, lying on the top of the rigging. They hit me, you will say, but I am not hurt. They beat me, but I do not feel it. When I wake up, so I can find another drink. And the main focus of the last one, 19, is again about drunkenness, an alcoholic, a person who drinks to excess. And listen to what the scripture said. Woe, woe, sorrow, strife, complaints, needless bruises, bloodshot eyes. Who has woes, who has sorrow, who has strife, who has complaints, who has needless bruises, who has bloodshot? A drunk. And if you've ever lived with a drunk, you understand this only too well, that they fall down, they stumble, they drink to excess, that in the end it bite like a snake and poison like a viper. Their eyes see strange things, they stagger, they imagine a lot of confusing things, and then they get up and they do it again the next day. Where's the next cup? And I've known a few drunks in my life, and I can tell you, I must confess, I don't waste my time with drunks. If somebody is trying to get off and wants help, I will spend the time to help them. I will help them with AA or Anamon or 12-step or whatever type thing. But if they're just insisting on getting drunk, that's their choice, and I avoid them. It's going back to that one. Do not speak to fools. A drunk is a fool, in my opinion. I don't speak to them. When they're drunk, you're wasting your words. If they want help, as Christians, we should help them. But the scripture is saying they have woes, they have sorrows, they have strife, they have complaints, they have needless bruises, they have bloodshot eyes, they're alcoholics. And if you happen to have one in your family, hopefully they will try to seek help. But in reality, quite often, from past experience, it's a hard disease to beat. So the next part had to do with what we talked about earlier with food, picking up verse 17. Do not join those who drink too much wine or gorge themselves on meat. So again, drunkenness and gluttony, according to the scripture, are bad things. So let's pick up the last three that we skipped. We have a few minutes here. Saying 15, picking up at verse 17. Do not let your heart envy sinners, but always be zealous for the fear of the Lord. There is surely a future hope for you, and your hope will not be cut off. Unfortunately, a lot of people envy sinners. They look at what people are doing, especially young people. They see all these things that people that look like they're having good time. They're sinners. They are at parties. They're Unfortunately, a lot of them are drinking and smoking and doing drugs, etc. And the scripture is saying, do not envy these type of people. On the surface, they look like they're having fun, but always have zealous for the fear of the Lord. In other words, as Christians, we should not envy sinners. We should look to God for our sustenance and our future and our life. Verse 17, saying 17 and 18 are the last two that we have today, and we have about 5 minutes. Scripture says, listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. Buy the truth and do not sell it, wisdom and instruction and insight as well. The father of a righteous child has great joy, and a man who fathers a wise son rejoice in him. May your father and mother rejoice. May she who gave you birth be full of joy. Verse saying 18 says, my son, give me your heart, and let your eyes delight in my ways. For an adulterous woman is a deep pit, and a wayward wife is a narrow well. Like a bandit she lies in wait and multiply many unfaithful men. Let's deal with 18. Anybody, men or women who are unfaithful, who involves in adultery, don't give them your heart. Don't commit to them. Matter of fact, Scripture said, like a bandit, he or she lies in wait and multiply the unfaithful among humanity. We won't spend a lot of time with that because I really want to focus on the last one in the last 5 minutes we have. Listen to your father who gave you life, and do not despise your mother when she is old. And the part that I want to focus on is verse 23. I want to read it. Buy the truth and do not sell it. Wisdom, instruction, and insight as well. And as I read that, I finally understood that it pays to invest in education. It pays to invest, to buy the truth. It pays to buy wisdom and instruction and insight. Unfortunately, a lot of people despise paying money to learn and better themselves. I don't know what else to say. Especially in America, I come from Belize originally. And when I was a kid, we went to school, but we had to pay for school. We had to pay for our books. We had to wear a uniform. And we had to, buy our own food. When I came to America as a 13-year-old kid, school was free. I got a bus ride to school. I got free food because we were poor. I got free books. And because it was free, quite a few people think free means worthless. And the Bible is saying, buy the truth, buy wisdom, buy instruction and insight. And what I'm talking about is education. It pays more than you pay for it. I believe in good education. I went on to college and seminary, and I had to work and pay for it. And I tell people, pay the price to get wisdom and knowledge and understanding and insight. Continuing education. I know even today I buy programs, I buy education stuff to continue my education, because the scripture is right. Buy the truth, buy wisdom, pay for good education, because it's so valuable. On the other hand, do not sell it. What does that mean? Do not sell it. In other words, with the truth, sometimes in investigating the truth, you have to pay for it to find out the truth. But we don't sell the truth. We only speak the truth always. We always speak the truth, even when it hurts us. I tell people, I can say anything on this Bible study, and the reason is, if somebody ever try to use my life against me, it's the truth, and the truth sets you free. Don't sell the truth. In other words, there are people who sell the truth and do things that are negative, and the scripture is making it clear. Pay for the truth, pay for good education, pay for good insight and understanding. And even today, I continue, like I said, paying for continuing education. because it is so valuable. But don't sell yourself. And that's the point here. Pay for a good education, but don't sell yourself. With that, we will end. Next week, we will pick up at Proverbs 24. We'll pick up the last 10 sayings, which will be Psalm 24. And then there will be further sayings. So next week, we'll be here at the same time. Thank you for your time. Blessings on y'all. And again, for all veterans, our thoughts and prayers are with you. And thank you again for what you have done for each and every one of us and the freedom we enjoy.